short-sighted, because it's kind of like, well, what about all these people before Abraham? They're not Jewish. Well, but you know, the bloodline. We got the genealogy from Adam all the way up to here. I mean, we got this genealogy. Yeah, we're not going to include Jesus in that genealogy, but we got a genealogy here. They like reminding everybody of their genealogy. But not you Gentiles. Except for Rahab. She helped out the Jews. That's a good one. If you ever want a kind of a bit of a kick, go back and I think it's Matthew's genealogy. There's something really odd about Matthew's genealogy. Most genealogies follow who? Which side?
The male.
But in Matthew's, there's 4 women. Tabor, Rahab, Bathsheba, and Ruth. Yes, thank you.
Took me a while.
No, I was about to say, okay. Rahab, Ruth,
Yes.
there's something very
Who was
interesting.
also not a Jew.
Yeah, there's something very interesting about also those women. You know what all those women were involved in too? Well, what was Rahab?
She was a
Harlot.
prostitute.
Well, what did Bathsheba do?
She had an extramarital affair.
Mm-hmm. And there's some actually debate, I think too, looking at it, that she's actually not Jewish herself. Tabor, everybody knows, this is kind of one of those ones in Genesis, we kind of skip this thing. Remember what she did?
Oh, she's one that
Poses
debated by
as,
her
well,
father-in-law.
yeah.
Yeah,
Basically, he thought, oh, she's a prostitute.
yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting deal.
Ruth is-
I think that's why Jesus wasn't so afraid to go talk to prostitutes. Like, I got them in my family. But anyhow, okay, so back to this anyhow. I get off on my rabbit holes, but anyhow. So yeah, the Gentiles are all part of it. Again, I'm going to go quote Bill here out of his Old Testament in the New Testament book here. And it says, the clause, I will make them in order that they will come and bow down before you. Is it a collective allusion to Isaiah 45:14, 49:23, and 60:14, and is reiterated in Psalm 86:9. And I'm going to look at a few of these here and read them for you. So if we go to, if you look at Isaiah 45:14, thus says the Lord, the wealth of Egypt and the merchandise of Cush and the Sabines, men of stature, shall come over to you and be yours. They shall follow you, they shall come over in chains and bow down to you. They will plead with you, saying, surely God is in you, and there is no other, no God besides him. So it's a reference to Gentile people from the nations, admitting that Yahweh is the true God. And then if we go further in Isaiah 49:23, kings shall be your foster fathers, and their queens your nursing mothers. With their faces to the ground they shall bow down to you, and lick the dust of your feet. Then you will know that I am the Lord, those who wait for me shall not be put to shame. So we got a series of verses here. And I'm not going to, and you can look at the other two, but it's the same kind of idea here. But the series of verses about Gentile conversion, or Gentiles acknowledging who the true God is. But now we've got a bit of a flip here. These Old Testament texts predict that the unbelieving Gentiles would come and bow down at Israel's feet and to Israel's God in the last days. This prophecy has been fulfilled in the apparent ironic fashion in the Gentile church, which has become true Israel by virtue of its faith in Christ. In contrast, the ethnic Israelites in Philadelphia fulfill the role of the Gentiles. You see the irony here? The Gentiles coming down to recognize, in the Old Testament, recognizing the true God. You have Gentiles now recognizing Yeshua, Jesus, as the true God and bowing before him. And now he's flipped it on them, ironically. He said, now guess what? These Gentiles you despise, who follow the true God, the true Messiah, you're going to bow to them. And likewise, the prophecy that God would demonstrate his love for the persecuted Israel before the nations seems to be fulfilled in an ironic manner. And they will know that I have loved you is applied to the Gentile-dominated church instead of ethnic Israel, as apparently in, of course, these verses I just read to you, as well as the Apocryphal book Jubilees 125 as well, mentions that that prophecy as well there too. And that's so if you go on now to Isaiah 43:4, actually I'll go back to verse 1. But now, thus says the Lord, he who created you, O Jacob, he who formed you, O Israel, because you are precious in my eyes and honored, I love you, and give men in return for you, peoples in exchange for your life. So God's disinherited the nations, but Israel is his own family here. Fear not, I am with you. I will bring you your offspring from the east, and from the west I will gather you. I will say to the north, give up, and to the south, do not withhold. And again, you get this regathering language and so on and so forth from the nations. So it's this reversal theme, this is the kind, we've seen this a lot. Also, this goes back to you're going to hate me for keep bringing this up, but Deuteronomy 32. And where we basically see the nations given under the sons of God. But here they're giving them up. And the Jews, ironically enough, as oppressors to the followers of Yahweh, I mean, Yahweh is the Jewish God. So how does this work? Well, it works because this way because a lot of the Jews, either in the Old Testament time, they abandoned the worship of Yahweh and worshiped other gods. In the New Testament time, they have rejected Yahweh's Messiah, who is Yahweh incarnate. They have rejected Jesus. And so now, they are set in opposition in an oppositional role. So now, the Jews are now enemies of God. Not all of them again. There's a lot of Messianic Jews, but these people here who are persecuting them, they are actually going against God now. They have become what the Old Testament pagans have become. And it sounds a lot like Romans 11 too. If you go read Romans 11, then you kind of know what I'm angling at here. We've talked, but in Romans 11, so on and so forth, it's essentially the same thing of Revelation 3:9. It's the same kind of trajectory we got going here. It's about this reversal, this ironic situation where Old Testament people of God are now the oppressors. They're oppressing Yahweh's plan. They're oppressing their own God's plan because it includes Gentiles in it. But again, what was Jesus' commission? To go out to where?
12 nations.
Well, it started where, though? I mean, I think Joey's done this in a sermon, right? Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the outermost parts of the world. Well, come on, folks. What's Pentecost? It's an undoing of Babel. You can't speak their language. It's like Moses. Oh, I'm not an eloquent speaker. Fine, I'll give you Aaron. But guess what? I'm the one doing the speaking anyhow, Moses. Well, how are we supposed to go tell people? Okay, we can go talk. Okay, let's go around Jerusalem. Okay, we can go through Judea. Here we are. We can speak each other's language, right? How am I supposed to go talk to these people over here? How am I supposed to go talk to the Germanic tribes? How am I supposed to go talk to the Celts? How am I supposed to go talk to the... well, they knew about India, obviously. I mean, Alexander the Great got part of it. But how am I supposed to talk to these Africans and all these tribes here? Fine, I'll take care of that. What happened? They're all together, tongues of fire. They go out, men must be drunk. But guess what? People all over understood what they were saying. And here's the deaf Jews. They're babbling. They're drunk. It's this sort of imagery here. They're going out telling them. I mean, you look at Paul's missions. I mean, it's like, fine, I'm going to go to the Jews. I mean, I'm going to go to the Gentiles. He does it. He takes it all the way to Rome. And what happens about 200 some years later? Constantine, right? It's now the legal religion of Rome. Then it's the legal religion of Europe. So on. And believe it or not, if you guys, I think I've told you this before, you know what frightens the powers of darkness? That the whole world gets the message. When that whole world gets that message, they know that that's like the trigger. Right now, we had chapel in our Lutheran service on Wednesday for the students. And he had a box up there, the LWMS, the Lutheran Women's Missions Society. I didn't realize that it actually started here in Oklahoma. But they have a mite box. You know what a mite is? You know the little woman that gave, just like, yeah, that's what they call it. Just people to put pocket change in. And he was talking about, he goes, yes, we have them in almost every country now, except for like 2. North Korea and forget the other one. It's kind of a smaller country. But yeah, talking to these little tribes in Africa, talking to these people in Papua New Guinea, all these little things. And it frightens them. I'm telling you what, it frightens the powers of darkness. Know that, hey, those people are getting the message. Those are our people. So again, so I think we all understand this. Yeah, move along, Todd. Okay. But again, I'll just leave it with this. So this is Romans 11:7. Paul says this, but if some of the branches were broken off, and you, although a wild olive shoot, were grafted in among others, so the original Jews planned, some have branches have broken off, Jews will reject the Messiah, is what he's saying here. And now the Gentiles get grafted in. You, a wild olive shoot, were grafted in among the others, and now share in the nourishing root of the olive tree. Do not be arrogant toward the branches. Okay, you newcomers, you Gentiles, don't be arrogant at the ones who were broken off. If you are, remember, it is not you who support the root, but the root that supports you. Then you will say, branches were broken off so that I might be grafted in. That is true. They were broken off because of their unbelief. But you stand fast through faith. Do not become proud, but fear. For if God did not spare the natural branches, neither will he spare you. In other words, they didn't get in by ethnicity. You ain't getting in by ethnicity either. You think, well, I'm living in the Bible Belt of America. Good old Southern Baptist, potluck every Wednesday. I was there. I got in. No. And again, don't be so proud to not go tell people who don't look like you, who don't think like you, who don't believe like you, whose culture is different like you. Don't forget, at one point, your ancestors were not considered worthy to hear the message either. So note then the kindness, so this is also verse 22 here. Note the kindness and the severity of God. Severity toward those who have fallen, but God's kindness to you, provide you continue in his kindness. Kindness, grace. We did, so basically here, it works in both directions. God to us and us to God. Otherwise, you too will be cut off. And so basically here, I mean, again, it's not like he's saying, I won't ever glue you on. I won't ever graft you in. They're grafted in, right? What's he threatening to do to them? Cut them off, right? Again, remember how he's been warning all the churches here? I will take that angel from you. I will take it from you. But again, I mean, I don't want you guys to think I'm preaching a works sermon either. No, again, this is all through faithfulness. But again, how will they know your faithfulness? By the works you do. They will know a tree by its fruit. So the elect become non-elect. The Gentile gets part of the family of God. And I'm hoping you see how the way Christianity has traditionally thought about election just really doesn't work with this kind of election. I mean, if you don't understand this high Calvinistic system, if you're not familiar with it, it's fine. I mean, I'm not a Calvinist whatsoever, believe me. I've had to throw some names out, but people, some of you, if you went to Southwood, you know, maybe know who I'm talking about. But eventually, changes, didn't quite do that. But he creates them out of, so moving along here, he creates them out of Abraham and Sarah. He starts over after he disinherits humanity at Babel, so they're new. And these are all the acts of God. God continues coming to them, making covenants. I mean, we have Abraham's covenant, we have the Mosaic covenant, we have the Davidic covenant, we have the new covenant. Making promises, bailing them out from this and that crisis and all these other things. I mean, if you go read the Old Testament, it's Israel doing good and God praising them, then the next generation screwing up and getting punished and God bailing them out at some point. There's a reason why the Jews have survived everything from their neighboring Assyrian tribes all the way up to the Nazis. Even today, God's keeping them around as a remnant. And there are, believe it or not, Messianic Judaism is growing big time. And believe it or not, a lot of Muslims are becoming Christians too. You may not realize that how many Muslims are confessing that Christ actually came to them in a dream. They sought him out. There's a man, I think he's become a huge evangelist, going to Muslims and working. He's got a book that says Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. I think that's the title of it. Something like Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus. I think it's phrasing. Huge. There are tons. Go on YouTube. There are tons of Jewish pastors, Christian pastors, who are in Israel right now trying to get people converted. They look at Isaiah 53. They look at these verses. They see his hands about him being pierced and nailed to a tree and all these kinds of things. And they're like, yeah. Not to get off on too big of a history lesson, but do you guys know what happened in 100 AD? So many Jews were becoming believers that the Jewish authorities, the Pharisees, Sadducees, they finally had a big meeting and they outlawed the Septuagint. That's the Greek, that's the Old Testament written in Greek. Because so many of them were getting a hold of it and it's like, oh yes, Yahshua, yes, this is the Messiah. This is the one that was foretold. They deemed their own theology heresy. But thankfully, in the outer parts of it, the outer Jewish priest, when they got word of it, was like, are they insane? And they preserved it. They said, no way. What is going on there? No. And it's coming back now. Israel's been regathered. That's another prophecy we're going to get into. They've been regathered, and I can tell you right now, there's going to be a remnant of them. And when we get to later on with the kingdom, you're going to see the names of the Jews and the names of the Gentiles posted on the walls, showing that both are in part of the kingdom. Now again, I'm going to, so let's see here. I think I've probably talked enough about this anyhow, but yeah, kind of wrapping up this bit here, and I want to try to get in the next here. But again, we're going to get this whole idea here, the name of God, the name of the city of God, the name on their foreheads being part of this whole thing. You're getting this white stone. I failed to mention this in the last class. This white stone is called a tessera. And this is where the cultural reference from that really clears it up too. In the Greeks, when they had their games, their competition games, the victors were received one of these white stones that they could use then as admittance to the victor's banquet after the games had finished. In the gladiator days of Rome took that same idea and they would award it to victorious gladiators who attained so much fame or so much victory that they could now be freed and be essentially retire. And essentially, it's all coming here together that you will receive. You're to be at work right now. When you die, that's retirement. But even then in heaven, we're still going to be working. There's still going to be things going on. We're going to be a big old cheerleading squad. But again, you're to be about the work going on here. And it's to tell people all over the world. That's what John is trying to get at here. Go tell us, man. I mean, it's just like, it's like he's harping on. It's like, you think Joey's something, and boy, you wish, just wait until you think John is here. I mean, it's not, I mean, God's not keeping this to Israel. I mean, Israel's like the size of New Jersey. He's not keeping you just there. It's like, no, the whole thing. Now he's telling these Jews, hey, don't you remember? Don't you remember? They didn't want to give it to you. You have it now? Okay, you know what, you Greeks, you think you're so great because you came up with philosophy and logic and all these things? Guess what? Go out there and tell those Romans. Go out there then and tell those Gauls, and tell those Celts, and tell those Germans. Tell the Tartars, that's the Mongolians. Tell the tribes in India. Go out and tell the different Africans. Tell all of them. Take it out to them. So that's basically what he's trying to sum up here with this whole idea. You're going to get your reward. Just go through it. Go through your tribulation. Go through your struggles. Go through it all. And again, so that's basically the takeaway here of that section. And I think it's, especially for us all here, what John is doing in Revelation 3 and also what he did in Revelation 2, these two chapters, in some sense, is preparing us for chapters 4 and 5, the divine council scene, because all this language that he uses of the believers transformed, white garments, white this, white that, and so on, this shared rulership, having crowns, and angels don't, us judging, these types of things. It sets us up for this notion. It's just part of the bigger picture, that believers become part of the body, part of the divine council on our glorification. And this is what Revelation is angling for. Again, we're not even at this scene yet. We're going to get there, Lord willing, soon. We're not even at the divine council scene, but John is prepping us. So even in these letters to these churches, he's sending that information into these letters here. He's hinting at it. Well, not really hinting, but he's kind of just like, here. And ultimately, it's supposed to be an encouragement to believers. This is your destiny. This is what God wants for you. This is really difficult now, but this is ultimately your destiny. Yeah, you're going through times of tribulations, but guess what? It's so much better on the other side. And ultimately, where we're headed is shared membership. Again, being with Jesus, being part of this family. So now we're going to come to the very divisive part. And I've been trying. So let me, before I do this, I like to have this. I do this with my students because I always like to know what the students think. I mean, I like to kind of get some feedback here. Okay. Because I've been having to really pray about this one because I'm like, you can really set some people off in this next section. How many of you know anybody who is Roman Catholic? Anybody have any Roman Catholic fans, family members? Okay. How about Greek Orthodox? Or any kind of Orthodoxy? Okay. How about Church of Christ? Non-denominational? Yeah. Wait a minute. Lutheran? I don't know why I forgot that. I work with them. I'm not a Lutheran. No. I have my talks with them. I'm not a Lutheran. Yeah. Who else? Methodist? Right. How about Mormon?
Yes.
You guys know some Mormons?
Yes.
Jehovah's Witnesses? Yeah? Okay. I bring this up. If you know, I kind of joke with Joey. I'm like, hey Joey, you gonna go have lunch sometime with the Catholic priest or with the deals? And he's like, kind of looks at me like, why would I? Why? I don't know. I just find it might be interesting for you guys to talk. So, because I really hate it when pastors get up and they try to go after one group, and then the congregation goes out and just has this mindset of that's that. You know what I mean? It's kind of like driving around with your dad. I bring this up because I was with my dad a few months ago. He still does this. There's all these bums around here. They all this trash, around here. Why, the city needs to get rid of them, but they can't. They got sued. And they don't know, all these bums, I swear, like this. What do? You grow bums, right? You become your parents, right? You use their vernacular, right? You espouse these things. It's hard not to do. And even if you become the biggest liberal, you get when I'm mad or something happens to them, they start sounding like their parents, and they realize like, oh, I just said what I said, what I tell other people not to say. But anyhow, I bring this up here because this next bit, if I was to say, take a rabbi, Catholic priest, a Lutheran pastor, I gotta get all the terminology right, they hate it when I call them the wrong thing, Methodist pastor, Baptist pastor, Orthodox priest, let's just throw some Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses in for fun too. You start to bring this next issue up, and you want to see contention, you want to see divisiveness. This is one of the big things that kind of really separates out groups. Baptism's one, Lord's Supper is one, and believe me, I have to hear this every year from the Lutheran teaching thing when we go, well, this is how we believe baptism. And I like how then they get to like, but like your Southern your Baptists, they prescribe to that. I'm like, no, that's not true. You guys don't? Are you Southern? Yeah. Oh, so what do you believe? Well, this is more like it right here. Now, I can't speak for everybody. If you don't know Southern Baptists, they're kind of a funny group. It's almost like they're very autonomous, and sometimes they don't even know what their own prescribed faith is, But anyhow, that and one red light word, hell. You put these people together and you bring up, okay, what is baptism? Ooh, you want to talk about this? Lord's Supper. Ooh, does it actually become the actual body and blood? Is it just symbolic? Is it actually kind of a fusion somewhat? It's not actually literally skin and blood, but if you ingest it, you can become sick because you're not a believer and this type of thing. I mean, you do that. Baptism, right? Well, let me ask you, you guys all know, what does Southern Baptists say about baptism? You gotta be what? You have to confess, right? And we only do immersion, right?
Right.
Woo, don't you dare tell that to the Lutherans and Roman Catholics. Maybe in the Methodists too. Right? Oh, no. See, when the priest would sprinkle the blood, they would dip the hyssop branches into the palm branches, I think, or one of the two, into the blood, and they would go. So you can be sprinkled baptism. And we do it with infants. Now, because we are told that everybody needs to be baptized. Of course, then you'd be like, what about that thief on the cross? Well, but he was probably Jewish and he was part of this thing too. Or not. Oh, no. But anyhow, that's what I'm saying. So we're going to get into this phrase here, and this is one of those hot button topics. Real hot button topics. And I'm going to try my best to kind of tell you what. And this, when we get to any of these contentious things, I'm going to throw out, even if you agree with them or not, I'm going to tell you what the whole entire spectrum is. Okay? That's between you and God. And I'm a human being, and yes, you're probably going to hear me throw my 2 cents in there at times too. But we get to this language here. I was kind of real hesitant. I was like, maybe I need to put this off for another day, but that's okay. We can even work on it next week too. But we get to this keys language. This is in Revelation 3:7. I've been putting this off. And to the angel to the church in Philadelphia, which means brotherly love, write, the words of the Holy One, the true One, who has the key of David, who opens and shuts, opens and no one will shut, who shuts and no one opens. And then in Revelation 1:8, I remember I skipped this when we were going through Revelation 1. Some of you were like, hey, he missed a lot of stuff there. I told you, come back to it. So I'm going to loop that back into it. Actually, I'm going to go back to verses 17 and 18 here from chapter 1. And see, this is the problem with teaching. John does this. And it's like, thank you, John. You just made my teaching a lot harder by your technique here. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead, but he laid his right hand on me, saying, fear not, I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore. I have the keys of death and, what's that other word?
Hades. Hell.
Yours says hell?
No, mine says Hades.
Okay, good. Things we're going to talk about here. Oh, I've only got 9 minutes, don't I? Ooh, good. I'll leave you guys on kind of a bit of a cliffhanger here. But I'll finish up with this, and I'll let you guys kind of meditate on it and think about it. Maybe do some research. Anybody here been playing the Google game with me? I'm really surprised. I usually have people go Google and they try to bring me things like. I'm like, well, did you even read that? Who is this person? Did you even research who that person is? No, but it's on Google. We found it on Google. It must be. It's like, are you kidding me? Okay, go look at the next 6, 7 search in things, and probably they'll all contradict each other. This is the statement here where I'd like to see people's jaws drop and then they'll perk up. And I tell Joey sometimes, and I joke with people, I'm like, yeah, I'm just waiting for them to start throwing eggs and building a bonfire and burn me at the stake as a heretic here. But did you know the Bible doesn't ever use the word hell? Dun dun dun. Where does this word hell come from? Does anybody know? It's not a Greek word. It's not a Hebrew word. It's not an Aramaic word. That's the language in Persia during the ancient culture. It's not even Latin. If you go on the Oxford English Dictionary and see, I wish I had my projector, I could pull it up here. The word, there are several ways. If you don't know this, English is a horrible language. I teach English. I have a master's in English. It's a horrible language. Again, going back to my analogy, or my story, if you go, I think the Oxford English Dictionary did this. They keep, it's huge books, guys, if you get a whole thing. But anyhow, they keep track of where every word is rooted in, where it comes from. And at some point, somebody decided, hey, let's do a study and see what percentage of English words all come from where. They found about a third of them are Anglo-Saxon. That's North German kind of area they prescribe to, and that's why we say "ya" and we get "yeah" and so forth. But then after William's conquering of Normandy, which is from France, we started to get French brought in. Well, if you know anything about Germany and France, they're neighbors, but they do not at all speak, and they are not rooted together. French is a romantic language. It's one of the Roman things with Italian, Portuguese, Romanian, French, Spanish. Yes. And German comes from another Indo-European root. But our English language is about a third French in root, a third Anglo-Saxon, and then a third of other things. And this is a lot of times your medical stuff, so like your Latin, your Greek, and other things too. But
And the rest Shakespeare.
yeah, and I know. I don't want to get too much into this tonight, but I'm trying to give you guys the reasoning for this. So what happened is after you got these Normans, and I always think that's funny because of the town Norman, so I kind of laugh every time. You have these Normans who invaded, and to the spoils go the conquerors, right? Well, we know the ancient world, you see a nobleman and he's riding on his horse and he sees a pretty little farm girl, he can do whatever he wants. He's a noble. And what's her word against his? So what do they start to do? They start making babies, right? Mommy speaks French, or daddy speaks Saxony, or vice versa, right? Which word do I use? Which word do I use? And this is where English comes in. They start muddling it together. You know what blue is in French? Blue. You see what I'm saying here? I mean, we start to take these words and start muddling it together until we eventually get English. And even English keeps changing. Go read Beowulf. You're like, what? Now go read Chaucer, Canterbury Tales, Sutta Rute. Go then Shakespeare. Go to Dickens. And you're like, ooh, you know, are we talking the same thing here? But hell is actually a word that is rooted in the Anglo-Saxon Norse language. It is their word for the realm of the wicked. If you go back and you find the old original, if you go, and then we have a wealth of manuscripts, but you go look at the manuscripts, it all says Hades. And in the Old Testament they call it Sheol. And if you're thinking, well, okay, those things are the same, well, not really quite. Now, is there a place of torment? Absolutely. If you want to use the word hell, by all means. I mean, I think, well, from what I've read in the history of it, hell really starts to show up more in the King James Version. And again, they were working with way later manuscripts. I don't blame them. The world was still very isolated. They had to work with the best they had. But we kind of get, this is where we start, the churches start to get these different things. Okay, and you probably, we're going to get into this here, but what is Sheol? Does anybody know what Sheol is? Yes, it's just the realm of the dead, right? It's very hard to describe. We are given very little information about these places, kind of like heaven. Somebody in here describe heaven to me. Well, I bet you what comes in your brains is some movie interpretation or some medieval Renaissance artwork, right? There's clouds, right? There's little angels flying around with their wings, right? And stuff like this. We get these sort of ideas, but the truth is we know very, 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 very little. This is like me coming in here and telling you guys, hey, guess what? I just saw a new color. What are you guys going to ask me? Describe it, right? Well, it's not red, it's not blue, it's not green, it's not yellow. Well, no, that's not it either. You see what I'm saying, the conundrum is of it? Yeah. And this is going to come in later too. How is John going to describe these things? And how are these people going to describe these other realms? They really can't. It's very difficult to do. And so they're going to have to give us language that they can understand. And one of the terms that they see here, and you see it in this still, Hades. Well, Hades is a Greek thing, right? So they're borrowing that idea. Okay, it's the realm of the dead. But in the Old Testament, they went to where? Sheol, right? What's Sheol? Well, it's the land of our fathers. Well, okay, what's there? It's dark. You know what I mean? They're kind of like, ah. But what's going to happen here with this whole thing? I mean, I tell you this because trying to do research on this and going and talking to these people, I go talk to, I'm like, I have no problem. I'll go talk to a Catholic priest. Hey, how you doing there? I'm not calling you father, but okay. Okay, let me go talk to the Lutheran guy. Guess what? You're going to start hearing a lot of different things. Now, I remember the first time, and I'm going to leave us on this note. I remember the first time, anybody know the Apostles' Creed? You ever heard of the Apostles' Creed? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's that line in there. He died and he descended into hell.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time working there, and we had to go to the chapel, and they had us try to have us recite that. And I was like, well, I was like, oh, I don't think I can say that, I remember Rich Dunbar getting up there making a whole big deal one time about this. He did not go to hell. When he said it was finished, it was finished. Then I go talk to the Lutheran about it, and he's like, well, have you read about 1 Peter here where it says this? And it's like, what do I do? It's like, what do I do with this? So I've had to go talk to quite a few people. I kind of like to get everybody's map here of how this whole process works. It's real interesting. So I think that's a good note to leave this on here. So next week I'm going to attempt to try to do that here. But if you guys ever want to do research on it, it's fabulous. Go look up things like Abraham's bosom. Go find all these things about Luke 16. Oh, Jiminy Christmas. You want to talk about a parable that opens like a Pandora's box? Yeah. So next week we're going to get into this keys of death and Hades thing. But again, by all means, go research the stuff and find out. The Catholics, they're more than happy to talk to you about it. The Lutherans, they're more than happy. Go get on their sites and look at their little doctrinal things there. And it's like, oh boy. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? I'm sorry I don't have my projector. We don't get to watch our cartoon video, but it'll apply to next class too. So. No? Okay.